Here's how we find it. Starting off today with an update, Austin Metcalf's story, Carmelo Anthony, and what's happening with him. And we're just going to bungee into our good friend, the quartering right now. We're just going to bungee into his stream.
Update on the Carmelo Anthony case today that literally no mainstream media is covering. There's basically a few local reporters in Texas that are doing the hard work and bringing out all this information. So I do want to shout out the work of Sarah Fields, who is really the only person that I can find that is bothering to report on this case anymore. There are now reports that Carmelo Anthony has fled the state of Texas and that the judge has approved it so that he might get a more favorable trial. And there are all sorts of other very interesting updates in terms of the case. The hundreds of thousands of emails.
What he's fled Texas to Guam because he could get a better trial in Guam.
Emails that were sent in and among Frisco ISD from employees being blocked from any kind of Freedom of Information Act. On top of that, it appears that his indictment is imminent. It could be today, could be later this week, but it won't be longer than the end of the month. So we only have so many days left. It's already the 18th, only so many business days left. So let's take a look at both what Sarah Fields has found and also this new article in the Daily Mail based on the footage that was released. By the way, shout out to everyone who has pre-ordered their summer legendary pack from my coffee company, Coffee Brand Coffee, which features for the first and possibly only time Köhne coffee.
Buy his coffee.
This is via Sarah Fields. Several updates regarding the Carmelo Anthony case. Frisco ISD emails and the Anthony family may be moving out of state. Several weeks ago, I requested emails between staff members that included names such as Carmelo Anthony, Drew Anthony, and the Metcalfs. Yesterday, I received a letter from Frisco ISD, written and sent to the Office of the Attorney General from Frisco ISD. This comes as I've already narrowed down my request 3 times, which brought the response from Frisco ISD down from nearly 100,000 emails. There was 100,000 emails about Carmelo Anthony in the system.
Okay, now this is actually important. You remember, was her name Angela Tucker, the black judge that gave Anthony special treatment? We've had special treatment from so many anti-whites around Anthony after he apparently murdered Austin Metcalf. And here again, we have the courts stepping in. You have hundreds of thousands or what have you, over 100,000 emails within the school and the county and et cetera, that people have filed, I get Freedom of Information and asked to review these. And the courts, they keep saying, no, you can't have. And so what Sarah Fields has done is she's reduced the overall number, added a greater degree of specificity in order to hopefully get the courts to allow these records, these emails, these communications to be seen. And guess what the courts do? How does this happen? Anti-whiteism.
To just $5,200, and the costs are reduced to just $300. According to Frisco ISD, on June 16th, which was on Monday, the district received correspondence, a compelling interest letter from the Collin County District Attorney's Office, stating that Collin County District Attorney's Office has compelling interest in the non-disclosure of any records in the district's possession related to requests like mine or any requests conducted or connected to the incident at the school. This letter states that releasing these records would interfere with the investigation and anticipated litigation relating to the pending case. This means from here on out, any request for records regarding this incident, the loss of life of Austin Metcalf, will now be denied. So they have now moved to deny the public its lawful right on any disclosure in this case. Now, will we get these emails 5 years after the case has been tried and Carmelo got off with a wrist slap on the wrist? Maybe, maybe never. There are so many questions around this case that it's difficult for me to really believe that we're ever going to get, what.
And when it comes right down to it, if the charges, remember we briefly talked about this when that bit of update made it to the public. Amazing how the anti-white media is really refusing to say much of anything about this. And of course, it's because the incident contradicts the anti-white narrative. They're not going to be able to easily make this segue it into a proof of anti-whiteism. And anti-whites, they can just look in and see this. Wherever they are, wherever they live, this is how programming the human animal works. This is how it doesn't work from just replacing somebody at the top and then thinking that then trickles on down to every single individual and they just carry out the will of whoever you voted into office or the new CEO or the new principal or whatever it might be. It's because everybody has the same anti-white programming, so they know how to respond to these things. What we're going to be talking about here in just a minute, the other piece of the update, as I'm looking fabulous in front of you today, the other piece of the update is that certain individuals are allowed to see the footage that is taken from a CCTV camera at the stadium of this murder. And there's something missing from the footage. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, look at the legal wrangling to prevent reporters, to prevent the public from seeing the conversations. What kind of conversations are taking place? Well, there might be things like a conversation, any type of conversation that could reveal that there was a motive, that there was that Carmelo hated Metcalf and he was going to murder him ahead of time. There could be information about Carmelo having a history of attacking others or attempting to murder others. You could imagine people in the administration, teachers writing back and forth about that. There could be information about the teachers themselves, principals. You know, the principal's an anti-white black woman as well, and them conspiring and organizing to try to create an environment, a context, and etc., where the conclusion of this is that Carmelo was just acting on the spur of the moment, accidentally did this. It wasn't meant to happen. He was frightened for his life, and so he should just have a wrist slap and then go about his way. All of this could be available in those emails. So my understanding, this is pretty damn unusual, and I'm curious, maybe if Blanco could get involved and have a look and why is this happening, and is it actually legitimate for them to conceal all of these records? You know, if it were the other way around, not a single thing would be hidden from the public. It would all be handed over. And if any teacher or administrator, if anyone thought that Metcalf didn't somehow deserve it, they would be hounded and attacked by anti-whites, fired potentially from their jobs, demoted, sent to work somewhere else so that they would want to quit because it would be so miserable. We all know that that's anti-whites and that's how they work. But in this case, they just say, no, you're not allowed to see. No one is hearing about the story out in the masses. So nobody cares. It's gone and forgotten, just like Austin Metcalf's life.
The information that the public needs. Now, is there information that's inside these emails between teachers and principals and other people in Frisco ISD about Carmelo? Sure. There could be information about a past of fighting, which some people have alleged, including an eyewitness. It could have information about some sort of beef or an altercation that had happened previously between Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony, which could go to premeditation. It could have absolutely nothing of value at all. Could be a bunch of overweight leftoid teachers sending hashtag free Carmelo back and forth. It could have nothing in it. But the fact that they have said, not only are we not going to release, this massive trove you asked for, but we're not even going to release this hyper specific one. I think that speaks to a very real possibility that we will never see what was in these emails.
All right, let's look at the actual video. Frisco ISD releases video of fatal track meet stabbing involving Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Let's put that up on the screen, and hopefully that commercial will be gone in a minute. If not, I will just make furious fun of it. Home serve. Audio.
Is releasing surveillance video of the stabbing at the track meet that led to the death of a student back in April, but only under very strict conditions. So through open records, they will allow whoever requests it to view that video, but no recording whatsoever is allowed. On that note, we sent our IT producer, Kelsey Mittauer, to watch that video. She joins us now in studio to walk us through what you saw. We're going to go in order here in just a second, Kelsey. But in general terms, what did the video depict? What did you see?
It shows everything from the moments leading up to the stabbing, to the medical response, to then the beginning of the police investigation.
Okay, and it lasted several minutes is what they showed you.
It did, about 30 minutes.
Okay, so let's start in the beginning now and talk a little bit about what you saw at the front end of that video, because you got to see the attack, the actual stabbing took place.
So it starts, I started watching about 9:53. The camera shows half of the field. So it's about from the 50-yard line on, and the tent where it happened was kind of right in front of the 50-yard line, but the camera is down here. Okay. It's positioned across the field. So everybody in the video, you can tell there are kids or adults, but no one's identifiable.
So a long shot is what
a long shot, yeah.
So a couple of minutes in, and you actually see the altercation take place.
Yes, everything leading up to it, everyone's milling about. It seems very normal. And then right at 9:55, that's when like there's this explosive movement or action between.
Did you hear it?
Two people under the tent. And that's when the employees in the room told me that's when the stabbing happened.
So there wasn't a big altercation where people were crowding around and Carmelo was fearing for his life. If you remember, that's what precipitated, that's the argument. It was like this big back and forth, and they were shoving. And what happens with teenagers, even preteens, when two of them are facing off? Everybody circles around, everybody is in on it and want to get a view. And nowadays, of course, and for some years, everybody wants to get out the phone and videotape it. She says, suddenly, at this hour and this minute, there's this explosion and Metcalf is dead. Now, I don't mean explosion as a bomb going off. The explosion is the furious stabbing him in the heart, and then it's over. So that's what's missing. And we can only deduce that from the fact that, well, specifically just exactly what this woman said after viewing it. She comes to us now and she said, there's nothing, and then all of a sudden, bang, and it's done.
9:55.
Right. And you were talking about people kind of start to scatter at that moment. Obviously, something went wrong. And so what happens next? Because now, a little bit later on, that's when the ambulance shows up.
Right. So when the ambulance arrives, it actually comes through near the end zone at the gate, and then it comes up to the 50-yard line directly in front of the tent. You can see Austin Metcalf is right here. But then when they pull up close to the tent, they realize that they can't get the stretcher to him because of the barrier of the bleachers. So at that point, then the paramedics have to get out, and then they have to walk all the way back to the end zone. This is actually, on the next slide. They have to go all the way back to the end zone and then come all the way back. That takes another couple of minutes. So at this point, they've arrived and they are actively working on Metcalf at that.
I don't know if she says this here or if it was somewhere else that I read it, but they immediately were putting up crime scene tape as they were still working on him. And if we have any police officers in the house that want to speak up, or maybe you just know a police officer, had they already concluded? Was he already dead? But they were going to go ahead and proceed through the steps of attempting to save his life. But I mean, you could imagine this colossal amount of blood. And then they've got to walk this stretcher all the way back down. Come on. So 100 yards they had to go with the stretcher before they could get back to him. Absolutely inept and ridiculous.
That point.
And we want to reiterate, we're using some imagery here to sort of denote exactly what was happening here. These little icons that we're using, the ambulance, because again, the video was not able to be released. You're watching all of this happen, Kelsey, and you're watching the time sort of elapse. What are you thinking about when you see this, especially when you see sort of the issues in getting Metcalf out of there?
I mean, you know, I understand why it happened the way it happened. They were still working on him. Actually, the thing that really struck me is they're working on him, and that's when you see the rain's coming down heavier, and then they actually pull out the blue tarp.
The blue tarp that we saw.
Right, and then I noticed the crime scene tape is already up. I was so focused on here, I didn't even see that, but they're building the crime scene actively around him as they're continuing to work on him in the bleachers.
So, and there was another thing that she mentioned right there that is also telling. That, remember, as the story came out, there were a lot of anti-whites saying, oh, it was pouring rain and he couldn't get wet. I mean, God, you can't expect this teenage boy to get wet. So he's got to get under your tent, even though there are tents all over the place. He's got to get under that specific, the rival team's tent. Well, now we find out it wasn't raining hard. It didn't start raining harder until he had already murdered Austin Metcalf. Frisco Independent School District has released surveillance footage of a deadly stabbing that occurred during a track meet in April. So a deadly stabbing by an anti-white son of a young white man. But only under strict conditions are certain people allowed to see this, like this local news. Under Texas open records laws, requesters may view such video in some cases, but are not permitted to record the video. The video begins several minutes before the altercation between Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. The camera positioned near the press box captures half of the field. The tent where the incident occurred is located in the bleachers near the 50-yard line, as this young lady was describing. A sudden movement at 9:55 a.m. is seen under the tent, followed by interaction between two figures. So there it is again, the verbiage of a sudden movement. Again, remember, this is not like teenagers are not like adults. Adults, if adults start arguing with each other, other adults will just walk on by. They'll just be like, most of us will just walk on by. I'm getting my ass out of here. Walk away. Teenagers, no. If there's a big altercation, they surround. Everyone shows up in surrounds. They want to get the best view. They want to see what's going to happen next. Who's going to back down? Is somebody going to throw a punch? Will it be a full-fledged fight? But all they're saying here is a sudden movement is seen under the tent. Frisco ISD officials say this is the moment the stabbing occurred. Several people are seen walking or running away, while others approach the area. Minutes later, ambulance arrives, entering through the gate. Everything we just heard right there. Stretcher moved to ambulance. Police remain on the scene. Video continues for several more minutes, showing police activity under the tent. Prosecutors may present the footage to a grand jury. And that's all there is as far as updates ever since the charge was filed, which we hope is not an overcharge, because if it is, and what is the exact verbiage again in Texas? If it is first-degree murder, I looked it up and I showed you all, they have to prove what's in Carmelo's head, that Carmelo had intended to murder Metcalf. And if that's the case, then it seems to me as a member of the laity that that's going to be a much harder case to prove than that he acted with reckless endangerment. He meant to harm Metcalf grievously, and that it resulted in Metcalf's death. We shall see. We'll keep an eye open for any more. This is a big story. And of course, we know all of the typical dynamics are at work in this story. You have a young white guy who was not taught the truth about the world. He didn't, far as we know, care for the white race. He didn't understand that different groups of people have different biospirits, different instincts. He didn't know how to behave around such people. He had parents that are clearly anti-white, and they have demonstrated how anti-white they are after the fact. We saw a little bit more of a healthy response from the mother, but not the father, as anti-white as he could possibly be. The blacks on the other side of the equation, radically anti-white, bringing other anti-whites into the equation, and recruiting people from across the country to donate money, to give moral support, oral support, glazing the family, even happy that he murdered a young white guy, promising white guy. And we're seeing, as is typical when it comes to the cucks, they want to focus on everything else. Cucks actually saying, oh, well, the leaders of the globe, they're driving us against each other. And now what needs to happen is the Metcalfs and the Anthonys have to come together. Are you absolute vegetables? Yes. The schmucks, of course, they've already forgotten Metcalf's name. They'll know Carmelo's name forever, though. And they'll say, well, there's another example of the Menners. And that'll be the end of that. So we're seeing the totality of everything play out exactly as we articulate and explain and teach in the Go Free Dialogic, and teach you to navigate for the betterment of white well-being, the achievement of the recapture of our destiny. We'll keep an eye out for this. But until then,